Domo arigato. This is the Blue Thunder, Jay Freddie, and I am locking you in a submission hold, and you are now locked in to the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Pro Wrestling Personified Podcast. I'm your host, Louis Carlin, and we are part of the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. You can catch me on Twitter at PWSOTH, and very excited today. We have a very, very special guest. You will see my next guest, wrestling for Wrestle One in Japan, Beyond Wrestling, Upstate Pro Wrestling, to name a few. Please help me welcome the one and only Jay Freddie. Jay, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you. And I just want to start. Reading your Twitter feed. You're obviously a Yankee fan, so congratulations on the big win last night.
Oh, huge. You know, especially now with the one-game playoff now, and you know, Oakland came in, you know, just as much as a power team as the Yankees, and you know, right in the first inning, the Yankees were able to jump up 2-0 with that big Judge home run, and they just didn't look back. So I'm excited for this Boston series, especially because it's the Red Sox. So
yeah, I think the Sox are going to take it in 6 games. That's my prediction. I don't want to get you upset. I know you. I grew up in Queens, New York, so I grew up a Mets fan. So
right, naturally.
Yeah, naturally. Well, they had a horrible season this year. But no, I think, you know, you got Mookie Betts, JD Martinez, Chris Sale. It's going to be a tough team to beat. I think the Sox are taking it in 6. What's your prediction on this series?
I honestly think I'm either think it's either going to go the full 7 or it's going to go 5. Now, the thing is, the Yanks bats right now are hot.
Yeah.
Even that last series against Boston, they won 3 out of 4. Then the series before, they took 3 out of 4, or 2 out of 3, I believe. So, yeah. I mean, I firmly believe the Yankees were the one team Boston does not want to play because they've seen them all year, especially being in the division.
Sure.
I mean, both teams won over 100 games, but that all doesn't matter. Once you're in the playoffs, you know, you start at 0. So, I mean, obviously, Boston's got good arms. Severino pitched great last night, you know, which I was kind of a little nervous because the back end after the All-Star break, the second half of the season was a little shaky. But, no, I think the Yankees got a good rotation. I mean, obviously, Jay Happ is a huge addition for him. Obviously, Severino, Tanaka, CC will probably get a game. So, we'll find out.
All right, we'll see. It's going to be a good series nonetheless. I think the Red Sox won the series 10-9 in the regular season, but Aaron Judge scares the hell out of me. So I don't know. It's going to be a great series, man. I'm looking for.
That's the thing. Oh, absolutely. That's the thing. They didn't have Judge in the lineup the last series. We were still able to pull wins out. Now you got a Judge swinging the bat again. So we'll find out.
We'll find out soon enough, man. So I gotta say, I know you've been around for a while, but I will say the first time I did see you was Night of the Dummies, Impact Wrestling, and man, what a freaking match against oh God, I forgot the guy's name. Efix, I believe.
Isis Effects.
Yeah, Isis Effects. Sorry about that. But that was a great match, you know, and I contacted you right away and I let you know how I felt. But that was basically your Impact Wrestling debut. So what was your feeling going into it, knowing that, hey, this is an Impact Wrestling one night only event? Did you feel like you had to step it up a bit? But what was your feeling going in?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, obviously something like that's a big opportunity, especially, you know, I've been wrestling, you know, way over, or close to 11 years now, you know, so it's, you know, an opportunity where, you know, if you're at home, you know, an opportunity's knocking, you better answer the door,
sure.
You know, especially to kick it all off, you know, and what benefited me is, you know, wrestling for years with 2CW in New York, wrestling in the Binghamton scene for a long time, and the fans, you know, have a good familiarity with me, and I knew it, you know, especially with, you know, the TNA execs backstage and the roster, you know, and I'm friends with a lot of them. I mean, Eddie Edwards is one of my best friends in the whole wide world.
Sure.
And, you know, for him to also give me good feedback afterwards was pretty awesome. But I knew it was an opportunity, you know, especially now with, you know, Impact really stepping it up. You know, the roster is fantastic. A lot of people are starting to tune in. Partnerships now with, like, what I'm hearing, Chris Jericho, you know, even doing cross-promotion stuff with Lucha Underground, even Ring of Honor. So for me, it was an opportunity to, you know, get my name really more out there, and I went out there, and hopefully I did a good job.
Dude, trust me, man. And I told you this when we spoke. Tremendous match, man. Really, really good. I've been a wrestling fan since 1978, man. I was like, this Jay Freddie, he's something else, man. It was great match. And then of course I went to watch more matches. I was watching the Wrestle One match, and I hope I get the name right, because it's the only one that I found on YouTube. Seiki Yoshioka, I believe. Did I pronounce that right?
Yep, Seiki Yoshioka. Yep.
Yeah, that was another great match. Was that I think it was a 2 out of 3 falls match, because you lost one fall and the match continued, and then the video ended before we saw a clear winner. But that was another great match. Yeah, so that's,
was actually cool about that match. What was cool about that match actually is it was actually my first tour in Japan back in 2015, and that was the Road to Muto tournament, where the winner of the tournament got to face the great Muta, Keiji Muto, at Korakuen Hall. So I remember my debut match was the typical, the foreigner 6-man tag, which was awesome, but this was my first singles match, and I think in my head my first chance to show Wrestle One and the Japanese fans what I can do. And Seiki, it's the contrast styles, where I kind of labeled into that, Dynamite Kid, Chris Benoit, Kurt Angle style, where he's more of a fast, like an Eddie Guerrero, so it was, really good as far as the contrast of styles to showcase what both guys can do.
Yeah, really good match. And I'm going to talk about Wrestle One in a moment, but I just wanted to ask you one more question about Impact. Could there be more Impact appearances or anything in the works, or what's happening with Impact, or is that just a one-off thing?
Well, I'm hoping to have a lot more with Impact. I mean, obviously, I had a lot of good feedback from the execs in the back, and there has been some talks, so I'm hoping to maybe one day show up in the Impact Zone and chase the X Division title or whatever gets put in front of me. But at this rate right now, I'm what Sting used to say, what did you know is for sure, nothing's for sure, but I'm hoping, I got a good feeling that we're gonna see a little more Jay Freddie in Impact.
Well, I hope so, man. Now, you mentioned Wrestle One. We spoke about the match, and you debuted, if I'm not mistaken, 2015. So what led to your debuting for the Wrestle One promotion?
It's actually a pretty unique story. Back in 2014, 2CW had a double shot weekend, Friday and Saturday, and then they brought in Tajiri and Mikey Whipwreck. And Tajiri at the time had a company called Wrestling New Classic in Japan. And obviously I begged the promoter, because obviously he knew Japan was like my number one goal, just growing up being a huge fan of it.
Sure.
So Tajiri brought over 2 of his young boys with him, 2 of his students. So I got to wrestle the one on Friday, the one on Saturday, and Tajiri really liked the matches, and he actually wanted to do a 2CW invasion angle, where it was myself, another guy, and actually, believe it or not, Matt Hardy. We're going to invade Wrestling New Classic in Japan. And then we had the passports, the documents, the visa all ready to go. And then Tajiri closed up shop. He closed the company down a week before we were ready to fly out.
Okay.
So it was kind of a bummer. And then I just kind of waited around, did the indies here, and then Tajiri half the roster got absorbed into the Wrestle One company. And then Tajiri at the time got a position with the office, and they were looking to book foreign talent, and I got a message from him saying, would I still be interested in coming over and going over for a long, extended learning excursion? I said, absolutely. So that's how that ball got all rolling, and I went there my first tour, and I was there for 6 months.
Now, did you have to go through, is there a Wrestle One dojo that you had, training that you had to go through before you were able to debut for them?
No, you do it as you go. Like I said, I've been working for a while before I debuted, but I lived right at the dojo, and I really lived the dojo life, getting up in the morning and doing all the workouts, all the squats, all the push-ups, afterwards going downstairs, eating chanko in the kitchen, and doing your dojo chores, cleaning up. So I definitely lived the dojo life.
So what was the experience like in Japan? I know you're coming from New York, and now you're headed off to Japan. What did you have trouble adjusting at first, or what was it like being in Japan for, I think you said 6 months in the beginning?
Yep. For me, it felt like a glove, as soon as I got off the plane, I was like a kid in the candy store. Just says, we got off at Narita International, which is about 2 hours from Shinjuku, is where the dojo's in Shinokubo, right outside of Shinjuku, and it's a 2-hour drive to the dojo, and I just remember sitting in the back seat like a a kid just looking out the window and seeing all the lights and all the people, and I was like, when it just feels right. It just felt right, and I adjusted really quick. Like, I got in with all the guys in the dojos, the rosters, like, especially us guys in the dojo, we're like a family, still to this day. Like, we're super tight, super close with one another, and because we were hanging out every day. We lived together, we trained together, we'd go hang out afterwards, we'd go get food afterwards, and we developed a really cool bond and always found a way to make each other laugh. And I always tell everyone, if you get a chance, take a vacation, experience it one time, because it'll change your world. I mean, Japan's just so awesome. It's a peaceful place, the people are nice, the food's great, the culture's great, and it's just a once-in-a-lifetime experience I was privileged enough to experience.
Yeah, one of the things on my bucket list is I want to go to Japan, go to Cork and Hall and see a New Japan Pro Wrestling show live. That's one of the things I want to do before I pass on. So that's definitely on my list. Speaking of New Japan, I know you're in Wrestle One, but are there thoughts of maybe New Japan? Would you like to hopefully debut for them one day?
Well, a bucket list for me is to be in one Super J Cup tournament. Obviously growing up being a big fan of the Super Juniors and the junior style of pro wrestling, that's always been a goal of mine. And obviously if the opportunity is there, I would definitely jump on it. I mean, obviously New Japan's easily second to WWE as far as a name, but obviously New Japan's getting all the, the wrestling's great, the roster's great, and the fans are really gravitating to it. And what wrestler wouldn't want to be a part of that? So if the opportunity ever came, I'd definitely. Of
course. Well, it's personally right now it's my favorite promotion. I absolutely love New Japan, and I'm very impressed that New Japan and Ring of Honor sold out Madison Square Garden in New York. That's quite an achievement for them. Now, I mentioned Cork and Hall. I was reading some time ago that Cork and Hall is the perfect venue for pro wrestling. And, if I'm not mistaken, you actually wrestled, in Cork and Hall for Wrestle One. What was it like, wrestling, at such a prestigious hall as Cork and Hall?
It's actually funny because my very first my debut match in Japan was at Cork and Hall. And we were the opener, and there was a sold out crowd that night, because the main event was Tajiri, the Great Muta, and the Great Kabuki all on one team.
Wow.
The team missed there, so it was sold out, and we were the debut opening six-man tag, and, it was kind of like a pinch me moment. It's like, wow, like I would have never thought in a million years when I first stepped into wrestling school I would debut in Japan, especially at such an historic building, because anyone who's anyone in wrestling has wrestled there. I mean, Terry Funk has wrestled there, Stan Hansen, as far as the foreigners, Doc and Gordy, and even the Japanese legends, like Chono, Muto, Misawa, Kabashi, Kawada. I mean, everybody's wrestled there. Dynamite Kid, who's my all-time favorite, wrestled there. Wow. Bret Hart, so it's like pretty cool to have your name on that list. And then my second tour, I wrestled for the Wrestle One Cruiserweight title there against my close friend Usuke Kodama, and having a title match at Cork and Hall. And the crowd being super happy and getting the J chants in there was just, unbelievable. Like, it's definitely, when you walk in, you definitely are in awe of the place.
Yeah, I can't wait to get there. Hopefully, my goal is to watch a live show there in the next 2-3 years. It's a dream of mine. So hopefully, you might actually be on the card when I head out there to see a live New Japan Pro Wrestling card. That'd be awesome if you were on the card, man.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, man, to see you against, maybe taking on Time Bomb, Hiromu Takahashi. That would be a terrific match, man. Or maybe Kushida. That would be awesome.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of talent there. What would you say is the main difference between American wrestling, like wrestling in North America, and wrestling in Japan? Is there a big difference, or is it primarily the same? What would you be?
The beautiful thing is with wrestling is that wrestling's a universal language, and the fans understand it, but the Japanese style over there is they're just so respectful of the wrestling. They said the bell rings, they are all intent focused on this match, and they cheer who they want to cheer, and and they see the wrestlers as fighters. Like, you go in there, you're a fighter, you're a player in the game, and it's awesome. Like I said, we're, here, you have a little bit more of the over-the-top gimmicks, and stuff like that, which I think is awesome. That's coming back, especially in the indies. Guys are having more of a character now versus just putting on a pair of trunks and going out and wrestling. But
sure.
Where in Japan, they're just so appreciative of the matches and so appreciative of every single person on the card. And, they just really, really enjoy it. And wrestling over there it's awesome. Like I said, for me, it's comfortable. Like I just find comfort. I just get in a good comfort zone over there when I wrestle.
All right, man. Cool. Awesome, man. I want to touch upon Upstate Pro Wrestling. A good friend of mine, RJ, from the Ringside Rant. I'm not sure if you're familiar with RJ. I think he does some interviewing for Upstate Pro Wrestling.
Oh, yes. Yep, I know RJ.
Yeah, no, he had a lot of praise for you. When I told him that you were coming on the show, he's like, oh, Jay Freddie. He had nothing but a tremendous praise for you. And he had two things he wanted me to ask you. The first one, he said you had a big match at Monsters Ball against Nick Ando, and he wanted to know what can we expect in the upcoming rematch. I think it's October 20th against Nick Ando. He said you weren't successful in the first attempt, in your first match, but he wanted to know what we could expect in the rematch.
Well, in the rematch, what you're going to see before, I mean, obviously, my goal is to make Upstate better. I think for years, you have a lot of these guys in Upstate, who think they're a bunch of local icons and heroes who never did anything. They never leave the area. And then you got somebody like Nick Ando who, he proclaims himself to be the captain, but it's like the captain of what? A sinking ship. And the fans need to realize is that, listen, you should appreciate what I'm bringing you, and I'm here to make this better. And, here to take Upstate into the future, but instead you're so stuck on your Rochester, heroes, me being from Syracuse, and they hate that, which is a weird thing to me that people from Rochester have a concept or this view of themselves as better than everybody. So, and last time Ando cheated me. There was a fast count by the referee, a Rochester referee, by the way.
Okay.
Obviously playing home field advantage, and I'm not crying sour grapes.
Okay.
But this time I'm thoroughly going to enjoy picking apart Nick Ando, piece by piece, beating him corner to corner, pillar to post, and just shoving it in Upstate in the Rochester people's faces.
Jeez, I'm glad. I'll tell you so. I'm glad I'm Lewis Carlin and not Nick Ando, because it sounds like he's in for a long night on October 20th against.
Well, he's in for a very long night, and he better sleep well the night before.
Well, I'll let RJ know to pass that message on to Nick Ando. And he also wanted me to ask you. He said you have a tattoo on your hand, and there's an interesting story behind it. Is that true? Is there a tattoo on your hand with an interesting story? Did you want to talk about that or no?
Yeah, okay. I can talk about
that.
My grandfather recently passed away last year, and he's all of us grandkids were super close to him, especially the ones that were still living up in Watertown at the time.
Okay.
And really, so like obviously we could tell the last few years, he lived to be 88. It's a good life.
Sure.
Some of us don't even get to see that. And he was the first one he was kind of like, he set the example to how to be a man, as far as he was the first one in his family to own a home. Like he started out as a grunt in the telephone company, handing up power wires and stuff like that in the 40s to retiring as the regional manager and director of Bell Atlantic, and he raised a family with 7 kids, and he was a great athlete as well. Actually had a shot to play professional basketball.
Okay.
Either with the Syracuse Nationals or the Boston Celtics, actually.
Whoa.
But
okay.
Obviously, at the time he had 5 kids. So, which is nice. I compare my father and his brothers, my aunt, like the Harts. You know what I mean? Like my father's the one of the family. He was the one that came along when his brothers were 18 and 17 years old. So.
Sure.
But he decided to do that, or to stay back and raise a family, and obviously the last few years getting old, and stuff like that, and he started to, lose weight and wither down, and then, I was gonna see him the next day, because I live in Syracuse now, so, but something told me about that day to go up there, you know what I mean? I just had a feeling, so I went up, and I saw him in his bed, and he was still alive, and I actually, held his hand, and even though he was probably, he probably could hear what I was saying, but he couldn't, respond to that point. His breathing started to get really, heavy and all that stuff. So I got to hold his hand and talk to him, and say my piece. And then literally as soon as I pulled out the driveway and left, he passed. So I was the last one to see him and hold his hand. So I actually got a tattoo of a hand on top of my hand as far as to symbolize that. You know what I mean? As far as to symbolize that moment. And then I got, his initials with the wings and a little quote from a song I liked to remind me of him. So that's the story behind that.
Oh, that's awesome, man. If I brought back any bad memory, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, it's all good, man. Hey, I'm an open book, and I think that's one thing I think a lot of people can relate to me in wrestling is, there's nothing fake or phony. I wear my life on my sleeve, so. That's
really cool, man. That's really cool. No, that's a really good story, man. Wow. Okay, we'll move on. Very touchy, man. yeah. It's just because I know my grandmother when I was living in San Francisco, she had passed away, and I never got a chance to say goodbye. So I know it's how tough it is. So but anyway,
absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's move on. So back to talk about how you got started in professional wrestling. What was the decision what made you want to become a professional wrestler? Was there a wrestler? Was it a TV show? What influenced your decision to become a professional wrestler?
Well, just like anybody, or anybody in wrestling, well, the majority of people in wrestling, when you're a kid, you're a fan and you're hooked. And I remember my first time ever seeing anything pro wrestling, it was like a WWF Superstars on Sunday morning, and it was, believe it or not, a Men on a Mission match. Like, I remember being a kid, and Men on a Mission was coming out to the ring. Mabel, Mo, and Oscar was rapping.
Yeah.
And I was hearing the music and seeing all the kids and the people in the crowd wave their hands, and I was like, wow, this is kind of neat. I want to be a part of that. And then I watched it, and then, fortunately for me, I had two older cousins, who were about 10 years older than I was, who've been wrestling fans forever, and they had all the Coliseum home videotapes and tapes of this and that. So I was very lucky and fortunate to be exposed to pro wrestling at a very young age. So then from there, it just evolved and it evolved. Obviously watching it on TV, getting a hold of tapes, stuff like that, the internet, downloading, all the files and stuff like that, tape trading. And then my original plan when I graduated high school was I was going to move to Philly and join ROH's school because I knew they had their school there. But come to find out in Syracuse, there was a pro wrestling school, and that's when 2W was just starting, and the trainers were actually trained by Killer Kowalski. It was a pretty reputable school and had a track record of sending top indie guys out, and it was only an hour from my house. So I would drive 2-3 nights a week, an hour to Syracuse, and from there I just started training, and then fortunately for me, I had a company to debut in from the wrestling school, and then it just started, rolling from there.
How was your family supportive? I know I've done a lot of interviews, and some families are supportive and some families aren't. So did you get any pushback from your family when you decided that you want to become a pro wrestler?
It's actually, I have a very similar story to it, and it's funny because I was just watching this the other day, because I'm also a big music fan. I was watching a Queen documentary, and Brian May had the same story, the guitar player. He's like, he left college to pursue music, and his family thought he was crazy. Like, my folks, they just didn't want to see my dreams be crushed, because they knew I was just so deep into it and so emotionally invested, and they just didn't want to see me be let down, and then I don't think I fully embraced their or they fully didn't give me their blessing, I think, until they first saw me live wrestle. And I think that's when it clicked, and it was like, I get it. You know what I mean? It was like Brian May had the same story when his father first saw him play a concert. They were like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? So then from there, and I think they just saw all the work I put into it. Starting out as a student and then working my way up from being the timekeeper, the cameraman, to wrestling guys like Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards and Bryan Danielson and Brody Lee and and everyone's just like, okay, we get it. So they support it, they love it. They just they're always just making sure I'm okay and safe.
That's good, man. That's good. Now, was there a specific wrestler that you decided to mold your career on, or your career after? I think I heard it. You might have said it here. I just don't remember. I listened to another interview. You mentioned that you were a Bret Hart guy. Was it Bret Hart, or was there another wrestler that you molded your career after?
Definitely Bret Hart. I mean, guys like the Stampede guys, like Bret Hart and the Dynamite Kid. So I'm kind of a short, stockier build, and then, and I kind of have that similar look. So I kind of would mold myself after that, and then seeing a guy like Misawa in Japan who was just so tenacious and so good at fighting and just a good fighting spirit. And I would take guys like Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero and like the technical guys I really gravitated to, because I'm not a tall guy, I'm only 5'7". So in my eyes, for me to beat somebody, I have to be full impact 100%, a pack of dynamite. Like when I hit you, I got to hit you, I got to have so much velocity. Those guys like Brat and Bulldog, and Malenko and, Benoit Dynamite and Misawa, like those guys had that.
Sure.
So, it's like being in music, like when a guitar player hears like Hendrix, wow, okay, like something with the way they did things and the way they worked just stuck in my head.
So you mentioned, your Bret Hart, Dean Malenko. Just going back to the WCW versus WWE Monday Night Wars. Were you a WWE fan or were you a WCW fan, or were you like me? Did you flip back and forth all the time?
Oh, I would always be back and forth,
Yeah.
but there's just some times where little niches would grab me, like when the NWO was hot.
Oh yeah.
I was a WCW guy where
Yep.
I would put the tape, I would set the tape in the VCR, record Raw, and I would watch WCW live, and then of course in my room when I'm supposed to be in bed sleeping to go to school in the morning, instead of that I was popping the Raw tape in to watch Raw.
Sure.
And then obviously when the Attitude Era started picking up, and when the Undertaker started doing like the Ministry of Darkness gimmick and Stone Cold just letting loose, and and a lot of the stuff going on there was like, okay, I'm going to gravitate to this, so I would ping pong back and forth. So for a while there, I was a huge WCW guy, and obviously WWF guy, with like Bret and Shawn and all them, but I would just ping pong back and forth.
Yeah, so did I. I remember, I like you, NWO came out and had the Sting, doing the Crow character. It's like I had to watch WCW, and then Stone Cold Steve Austin came along, and The Rock, and I slowly started gravitating towards WWE until it was full WWE. But yeah, that was a fun time for a wrestling fan. I kind of miss those days. But nowadays is actually you got the success of All In. You got promotions like Ring of Honor, Impact, Major League Wrestling. They're all thriving. How exciting is it right now to be a professional wrestler today? Because there are so many opportunities right now, and the business seems to be thriving right now. So how exciting is it right now for you? Because a lot of things going on right now in pro wrestling.
Oh, it's a great time to be a wrestler right now. And for me, it's really awesome to see is everyone in the business having fun, and they're having fun being, themselves, or, being a character of themselves, and like you said, there's a lot more opportunities. For a while there, like, not to sound like not to play the old man, old man card, but like back when I first started, all you had was a MySpace page, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
And that was when it was just first starting, no Facebook or anything like that, and you had to send VHS tapes, and all the indies were so small, because really it was just WWE, and that was it. It was WWE, and then ROH was a cool cult following, but that was really only it in America. Impact was still, growing. It was still on weeknight TV, and then finally they got the Fox Sports deal there, but now there's an avenue for everybody, like you said, there's All In. It was great for independent wrestling. It was great for the wrestling business as a whole, because it showed that there's ample opportunity if you want it to go get it, and there's places where, men and women and wrestlers as a whole can work. Like, obviously, the fans now, I think, there's an alternative. Like, that's what made ECW so great in the 90s. There was an alternative to what they were seeing out of WWF and WCW. With the indies now, there's an alternative to the normal WWE niche. Now people can spend $15-20 at an indie show and see 8 incredible matches, 8, different styles of matches, different casts of characters, and not the same stuff you see every night, on a Monday night or whatnot. And then they gravitate to that. It's like, wow, there's more out there. For me, it's kind of like the old territory days back in the 70s and 80s, even before that, where you'd have these guys in this area, like in the Georgia Championship Wrestlings, and these guys in the Mid-Atlantic, and these guys in Florida, and these guys in Texas, where, especially now with the independents, you have the Midwest region, like AAW, AIW, Rockstar Pro, Wrestling Revolver, exploding. Then you got the Northeast here with, Beyond Wrestling, Limitless Wrestling, upstate in Rochester, CCW down in, Pennsylvania, Chikara. You had Wrestle Circus in Texas there going. Like it's like, and obviously out west in California, you got PWG, there's, every area's got a cool little thing going, and what's cool to see is a lot of the top indie guys are being bounced around and getting to these places, and fans are getting an opportunity to see everybody. So it's a good time.
Yeah, it's a great time. I know you mentioned, Mid-Atlantic and Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm a little older than you. I was a kid during that era, and that's my favorite era, because I remember I was living out in Long Island, East Meadow, New York, and we had just gotten cable, and we had the Superstation, and Georgia Championship Wrestling was on, and I was just hooked immediately. I remember seeing the Freebirds, Ted DiBiase, Steve O, Steve Kern, just a great time. And wrestling now, you're right, there was a bit of a lull, but now with wrestling now, with all the promotion, you just name it, it's very exciting. You got Powerbomb TV, $10 a month. I could watch all these promotions, and like you got Josh Alexander at Alpha One, tremendous wrestler. So it's really, really good time for a pro wrestler and a pro wrestling fan. So, I'm very, very excited about what's going on right now.
Oh, absolutely. Like you said, it's like when you first discovered, Georgia Championship Wrestling on the Superstation, when you finally got cable, it's like we're now, like you said, for $10 a month, you can discover new talent, new promotions, all over the place. Like you said, wow, I watched, Josh Alexander, another great talent you just said. Wow, I just watched him in Alpha One up in Canada. Yeah. Cool. Where else can I see him? And then you see he's working for this company. You know what I mean? It's like, wow. And then I just saw him wrestle Sami Callihan at Impact in a cage match. That's awesome. You can. It's good to be a wrestler, because it's good. You can now, especially now, with Twitter and Facebook, you can really get your stuff out there.
Yeah, I was actually at that show live, by the way, when Callahan against Josh Alexander, when he got his head busted open. I was at that show. Tremendous show. But we'll save that for a Josh Alexander podcast. Now, I mentioned Ring of Honor. You were actually in Ring of Honor a few years back, and I know you had maybe one or two matches with Eddie Edwards, as well as a couple of dark matches. What was the experience like? It was early on in your career, and you were wrestling for Ring of Honor, so that must have been a great experience early on in your career.
Oh, it was amazing. And I remember, like I said, that's another fascinating story. I feel like anything I kind of get's kind of like a fascinating story behind it. Because I remember I was wrestling in New England a lot, and Bobby Cruz, a ring announcer, he's from New England, and he's ring announced sometimes for Top Rope Promotions out of Fall River, and he would be in charge of booking the extras for Ring of Honor. And I remember saying to him, I I really want to be there, what can I do? And then he booked me for the ECW arenas. Back then, that's when they were on HDNet, and they would do the HDNet tapings at the arenas Friday and Saturday. And then the week before I was supposed to go, they canceled that. So then I wrestled Davey Richards in Syracuse at the time when Davey was red hot. Uh-huh. And then from there, after the match, he was like, hey, do you want to come to ROH? And then I was like, hell yeah. So then I went down the next weekend. And, Eddie, who I've known for a long time, and Eddie's like my mentor in wrestling. He's kind of like my big brother. Basically, they're like, all right, that's when Eddie was a TV champion. They're like, all right, you're in the Wolf Hunt Challenge that night. And then wrestling Eddie before, I knew, fortunate for me, I kind of had a leg up on the other guys who've never wrestled before, so I knew what to expect. And then where he was beating guys in 20 seconds, I actually got 4 minutes on the 10-minute challenge. I think I lasted pretty long, for just being as Rocky would say, a ham and egger who wrestles in gyms, and and then from there, just kind of got, the invite back, and then doing a bunch of darks, and then from there, I was getting booked on house shows, like when they would do New Bedford, Mass, and stuff like that. And then 2012, unfortunately, they lost the HDNet deal, and then they were kind of going through the transition with Sinclair, and just that's kind of how that all ended. But I mean, obviously, that's another opportunity I think that's waiting to be had as well. So never say never.
Okay, there you go, man. There you go. And I'm looking at some of the the opponents you had at Square Circle Wrestling, Kevin Steen, of course, that was Kevin Owens in WWE. We mentioned Eddie Edwards, Sami Callihan, Shane Douglas. That's some great talent there. Who would you say have been some of your favorite opponents? I'm guessing Eddie Edwards would be on that list, but who else would be on that list?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some of my favorite opponents, definitely Eddie. The Davey match was really the one match because, like I said, I was only like 2 years into wrestling, and that's when Davey was the measuring stick on the indies. And I remember begging the promoter at 2CW to have that match because for me it was like that. I need this mentally because I need to know if I'm ready to take that next step or if I have to go back to the drawing board. And then everything just went off well. Obviously wrestling the Wolves, Daniel Bryan in my hometown was amazing. Luke Harper, Brody Lee, as other people know him, one of my favorites. Obviously, you said Sami Callihan, Rich Swann, getting the chance to wrestle those guys. And even like for me, being an ECW fan as a kid, Shane Douglas, who I was a huge Shane Douglas fan, and getting to wrestle him was cool. Getting to wrestle the Bucks and AJ Styles on the last show, like,
oh wow,
you kidding me? That's crazy. To open up the very last 2CW show, it's myself, Braxton Sutter, Pepper Parks, former Impact wrestler, and
sure,
and Sean Carr versus the Young Bucks and AJ Styles, the Bullet Club. Like, that's insane. And getting to wrestle guys like Elgin and stuff like that, Biff Busick, Oni Lorcan now, and I was just very fortunate. I was very fortunate to have those opportunities to get better and to share the ring and learn from those guys.
Is that AJ Styles Young Bucks match available on YouTube by chance?
It is.
Okay.
Yep, it is up on YouTube. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up. So let me just write that down. Cool, man. Cool. Now you mentioned a lot of names. Do you have any dream opponents that you haven't wrestled yet? Kenny Omega, maybe. Anyone that you would like to face?
Oh my God, absolutely, man. Obviously, Kenny Omega's the man right now. Who wouldn't want to wrestle him?
Yeah.
Definitely Kenny Omega. Seeing a lot of the guys on the indies doing well. One that's got my kind of sparking my interest is Josh Briggs,
okay,
wicked up and comer who you're going to see a lot. Definitely a guy like Eli Everfly in a singles would be fun. Even guys like even in Japan, like even the Wrestle One company, Shotaro Ashino right now is the heavyweight champion, and he was kind of like my little brother in all these tours, and now to see him excel to the top, and that'd be a match I'd like to have as well. And obviously guys in New Japan, guys like you said, Kushida and Naito and all them. I mean, that'd be great. Sho and Yo, Roppongi 3K.
Oh man, they're awesome.
Those kids are great.
Yeah. Are you headed back to Japan anytime soon?
Yep, I'm actually finalizing the details either for the end of this year or early next year, but definitely we'll be back within 6 months or so or less.
All right, awesome, man, awesome. What advice would you give to anyone that say a 16-year-old kid comes up to you and says, "I want to be a pro wrestler"? What advice would you give to him or her?
Oh, definitely go for it. Like I said, you only live this life one time, and you only get to experience this one time. If that's what you want to do, put your head to it, and also be humble. Stay, especially when you first start, eyes and ears open, mouth shut, and just take in what people are telling you. You're going to have moments where you're going to get constructive criticism, and it's people not yelling at you; it's people trying to make you better. And never stop learning. Like you once you think you've mastered something, you learn a completely different way to do it. You never stop learning in this business, and don't forget where you came from. It's unfortunate. There's some guys you see, where you remember them as a bright young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed,
sure,
kid, and then next thing you know, he gets the little bit of the indie magic juice in him, and they kind of see an attitude change a little bit, but that's a very small majority, but definitely don't forget where you came from, and get in a ring. And like I said, when you first start, it's like being in a band. Like a band like, I don't know, Metallica. Like when they first started, they were playing every dingy bar, club they can get their hands on to get their name and their songs out there. So like when you're a young wrestler, travel, get in a car, travel, hit the roads, and get on any little indie show you can get on and wrestle as much as you can and just get in a ring and never stop learning. Watch wrestling, like really learn the methods of why they do it. And like I said, and just stay humble, be yourself, and, and treat people with respect and respect the business. Like I said, especially now with like social media and politics being big and everything, where I've kind of been cut from that old school cloth where it's like, you know, when you go to work, you kind of check your business at the door, and then you go to work. You know what I mean? Like, right. That's kind of like how I've always just operated. Like I said, like my wrestling life's my wrestling life. My personal life I keep to myself. You know what I mean? But other than that, like I said, you know, just if you want it, go get it. And as Killer Kowalski, my trainer's mentor and trainer, once said, you know, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll hit a star.
There you go, man. You have you thought about maybe doing some training, or maybe you have, or maybe even opening up a training school one day?
I actually do get the chance to get back to the wrestling school in Syracuse time to time, and you know, especially if I'm getting ready for stuff, I'll roll around and I get to bring a lot of the experiences I learned from the dojo in Japan back to there, and really, you know, kind of teach like the kids and stuff, like their way of doing things and stuff like that. It's funny because like you see a lot of like the guys on, like, you know, if you look at like MMA, like a lot of the best trainers sometimes weren't like a top, you know, heavyweight. Like Greg Jackson from American Top Team, I believe for a while was like the top coach. Like he was, you know, a middle of the road mid card fighter, but he just has a keen eye for things. And like, for me, what's really rewarding is like sometimes like a lot of the young kids from Buffalo or, you know, Syracuse or whatnot will send me a match and they'll be like, hey, like, can you please watch this and give me your feedback, you know, and I'll have a notepad out and I will write down and I'll put them in numerical order what I've seen and maybe what you can do instead, you know. I mean, I know I'm not no WWE superstar or, you know, headlining WrestleMania, but for someone to actually come to me for input, I think is pretty awesome and rewarding. And, you know, I have no problem helping anybody out. Like I still ask for advice all the time, you know. You never stop asking. And then when someone wants to, you know, and just be brutally honest and, you know, tell them the truth, you know, like, cause you don't get better if you sugarcoat somebody, you know, like you at the end of the day, you're there to benefit them and then you benefit yourself from seeing them and maybe you learn something from what they did, you know, so the learning tree is always there.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, I'm doing this podcasting and I'm always learning all the time as well. So no matter what you're doing, there's always room to learn and become better, man. One more question and I'm going to let you go. I meant to ask this question a little earlier, but I see I skipped over it. I'm not sure why, but you're involved in a great tag team called American Strong with Rory Gulak. I watched some of your matches, watching against Tom Lawler and Chuck O'Neill. I read somewhere that you took on LAX, for Beyond Wrestling. How did you guys, hook up and become a tag team?
Well, it's funny because like me and Rory have always kind of been on the same page as far as liking wrestling and stuff like that, and we always just got along. You know, like just there's people in wrestling you just, you know, you even though you live far from each other and you only see each other once a month, you feel like you've known that person forever. You know, him and I just naturally get along, and we had a match at Beyond that went off really well, and then from there, Drew Cordero, the promoter, was like, I want to put you guys as a tag team. So then, you know, both of us, you know, he went to Japan before with Big Japan, you know, through CCW, and obviously my experience with Wrestle One, so it all just made sense, you know, and we're trying to really, you know, get the ball rolling on that, you know, and because Rory's been around for a while, I've been around for a while, so it's like, why not? Let's combine our efforts and see if we can, you know, wrestle more.
All right, and I know you have another tag team. I think it's the Thick Boys with John Silver.
Yes.
So, I mean, is that are both tag teams current right now, or are the Thick Boys done?
Yeah, both tag teams are very current. Me and John just wrestled 2 weeks ago at Limitless, and that's the same thing. Like me and John, same thing. We just get along great. Same personality, same pair of goofballs, and then from there, Randy, the promoter up at Limitless, wanted to put us as a team, and then he wanted us to be like like an American Wolves, you know, strong style, you know, team. And then me and John were kind of, you know, because we're both known for being, you know, hard hitting guys, which we still do in our matches. But then we just kind of added shtick to it, where he was like, we should be called the Thick Boys. And I was like, oh, okay. I go, we should wear denim vests. So we kind of ping ponged like frat boy, like, you know, just goofy party dude ideas, and then from there the people just gravitated to it. It's funny because we're both not tall guys and we act like we're Vader. We act like we're the biggest dudes in the room, you know. Okay, dude.
LAX against American Strong. I know I asked you about one match on YouTube. Can that match be found anywhere? I'd love to see that match.
Yep. Yep, that match is actually on Powerbomb TV. If you look that up,
Okay.
It's actually one of my favorite tag matches. That was the match that put me and Rory as far as in the scene, as far as in Beyond, as far as a tag team. Like that match went off really well.
Okay, as soon as we're done here, I'm going on Powerbomb TV. I'm going to watch that match, man. Before we go, before we wrap this up, I know we mentioned earlier October 20th against Nick Ando. Do you have anything else you want to plug? Any upcoming matches? This will be on probably sometime next week. So if you have anything coming up, any social media you want to plug away, man.
Yep, I have. Said October 20th. I got Upstate Pro against Captain Nick Ando again. The next night I have Wild Zero in Syracuse, where I'm wrestling the Red Death, Daniel Garcia. So that's a match a lot of people are looking forward to.
Okay.
I got Beyond Wrestling and Limitless coming up next month, and then I might have a few surprises or two in between.
All right, sounds
and then
good.
on Twitter, and then on Twitter I'm at Jay_Freddie. You can check out my weird wrestling posts, weird sports, music, whatever I'm feeling that day, I guess.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jay. It was indeed an honor. Great having you. I love having you as a guest. Anytime you want to come back, all you gotta do is ask, and you're always welcome here, man.
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I definitely will be talking to you soon, I bet.
Okay, and good luck to the Yankees. It's going to be a good series. You know what? You won me over. I'm rooting for the Yankees now. So let's go Yankees.
There we go. Good man.
Okay, man. Well, thanks a lot, man. Well, this has been the Pro Wrestling Personified podcast. I'm your host, Lewis Carlin. We are part of the Tap Out Wrestling Podcast Network. I want to thank my guest again, Jay Freddie, today. And until next time, thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye, and stay safe, everyone. So long. Bye-bye.